I let my mother-in-law move in after her stroke. Now she's turning my kids against me behind my back. When my mother-in-law, Patricia, had a mild stroke last fall, my husband begged me to let her move in. I was hesitant, not because I didn't care, but because we'd just finally found a rhythm in our household: 2 kids, full-time jobs, after-school soccer, homework chaos, and a dog that acts like a third child. Adding another adult, especially someone as strong-willed as Patricia, felt like shaking up a house of cards. But how could I say no? She's family. She needed help. And so, with a reluctant smile and a heart trying to believe it was the right thing to do, I moved my office out of the downstairs guest room and set it up in a cramped corner of our bedroom. That's where Patricia would stay, and at first, she seemed grateful. She was still recovering, after all, using a walker, resting most of the day, needing help with meals and medications. I cooked for her, scheduled her doctor visits, and made sure the kids included her in our routines. My husband, David, promised it would only be temporary. Just until she gets back on her feet, he said. But weeks turned into months, and something started to shift, subtle at first, like when she would correct how I packed the kids' lunches, or when she told them bedtime stories that ended with little digs about how mothers these days don't know what they're doing. I tried to brush it off. I told myself she was old school, set in her ways, probably just feeling useless and trying to assert herself. But then I noticed the kids started pushing back against me. My daughter, Lily, rolled her eyes when I asked her to clean up. My son, Max, told me I was too strict and that Grandma says I should chill out. At first, I thought it was just normal kid rebellion, until I overheard Patricia whispering to Lily in the kitchen one night, saying, "Your mom doesn't really understand you like I do, sweetheart. Some people just aren't meant to be mothers." I froze. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And worse, when I told David, he said I must have misunderstood, that his mother would never say something like that. But I know what I heard. And something tells me that this is only the beginning. I started paying closer attention after that night, watching, listening, waiting for confirmation that what I heard wasn't just some stress-fueled hallucination. And it didn't take long. Patricia had found subtle ways to insert herself into every corner of our lives. She started waking up earlier than me, making the kids pancakes drenched in syrup even though we've always tried to keep breakfasts light. When I'd come downstairs, the kids would already be laughing with her, plates empty, and they'd look at me like I was interrupting something. One morning, I reminded Max he needed to brush his teeth before school and he snapped, "Grandma says you only care about appearances." That one stung. Patricia played it off, saying, "Oh honey, he didn't mean it like that," but she never denied she said it. David kept defending her, telling me she was still adjusting, still recovering, that I needed to show her grace. But what about me? Who was showing me grace while I slowly got erased from my own family? She'd sit in on our family movie nights, hijack the remote, and when I'd ask the kids what they wanted to watch, they'd look to her instead of me. I tried to have a heart-to-heart with Patricia, to set some gentle boundaries, to explain that I appreciated her help but felt like we were stepping on each other's toes. She smiled at me, tight-lipped, and said, "I'm just trying to keep this house from falling apart. You seem so overwhelmed." That word echoed in my ears for hours. Overwhelmed. Like I was failing. I caught her snooping through my things once too, my dresser drawers half opened, my planner misplaced, and once, even my phone moved from where I'd left it charging. When I confronted her, she said she was just tidying up, but I didn't believe her. The kids started asking her for permission to do things instead of me. When I'd say no to sleepovers or screen time, they'd run to her, and more often than not, she'd say yes. I was being undermined in real time, and my husband didn't seem to notice, or worse, he didn't care. I started to feel like a guest in my own home, like the ground beneath me was shifting, and Patricia was more than happy to watch me sink. But the scariest part was this: I didn't know how far she was willing to go. Things got worse when I came home early from work one Wednesday. I'd had a last-minute client cancellation and figured I'd surprise the kids with a midweek ice cream run. The house was oddly quiet for that time of day. I walked in, dropped my bag, and called out, but no one answered. Then I heard laughter from the backyard. I stepped outside and saw Patricia on the swing set with Ellie and Max. They were laughing, and Ellie called her mom. My heart dropped. Patricia didn't even flinch, she just smiled like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stood there, frozen, until Max spotted me and shouted, "Hey! You're home!" I pulled Patricia aside, trying to stay calm, and asked if she'd corrected Ellie. She gave me that same tight-lipped smile and said, "Kids get confused sometimes. You've been so busy lately, I'm just filling in the gaps." Filling in the gaps. Like I was some broken part of their lives that needed replacing. That night, I told David what happened. I expected outrage. I expected him to be on my side. But instead, he rubbed his temples and said, "She's been through a lot. Maybe don't make this into something it's not." I couldn't believe it. I was losing my children, my authority, my identity, and he thought I was overreacting. A week later, I went to pick up Ellie from school and found out Patricia had already signed her out. She hadn't told me. I called David, furious, and he said he'd given her permission because I seemed stressed. I was livid. This woman had inserted herself into every aspect of our lives, and no one seemed to see the danger but me. I started keeping a journal, documenting every incident, every overstep, every passive-aggressive comment she made when no one else was around. I was starting to feel paranoid, but it wasn't paranoia if it was real, right? The tipping point came when I found Patricia in my closet, holding my old wedding album. She jumped when I walked in and said she was just reminiscing. I took it from her and told her to stay out of my personal space. She gave me a cold stare and said, "You've never appreciated what you have. Maybe it's time someone else did." That's when I realized, this wasn't just about her finding comfort in our home. She wanted my place. And she was getting closer every day. I started locking my bedroom door when I left for work. I hid important papers, birth certificates, passports, even my journals, in a lockbox and shoved it under the bed. I stopped telling David everything. I needed proof, something undeniable to make him finally see what was happening right in front of him. One morning, I overheard Patricia talking to Ellie through the baby monitor. I kept one in Ellie's room in case she had nightmares. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but I was passing by when I heard Patricia's voice, calm and sweet. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Mommy will always be here." Ellie said, "But I already have a mommy." There was a pause. Then Patricia said, "Sometimes people change. Sometimes families change. You'll understand when you're older." I felt physically sick. That was the moment I realized this had gone beyond casual overstepping. She was planting seeds in my children's minds. She was trying to rewrite the story of our family. That weekend, I sat David down and told him everything. I played the recording from the monitor. He listened in silence, his face pale. When it ended, he didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "She didn't mean it like that." I exploded. What would she have to do for you to finally take this seriously? Move into our bedroom? Change her name to mine? He looked exhausted, cornered. "She's not well," he muttered. "You know that. I can't just throw her out on the street." "She has family," I snapped. "She has other options." "I don't." He didn't respond. That night, I took the kids to my sister's. I told David we were staying the weekend. But I didn't come back. Not until he made a decision. I thought a few days apart would be enough to wake him up, force him to act. But instead, Patricia started sending me photos, pictures of her making dinner in my kitchen, sitting on my couch, brushing Ellie's hair. The captions were subtle, taunting, holding down the fort. "They miss you." I showed them to David. He just sighed and said, "She's trying." That's when I knew. He didn't see what I saw. Or maybe he didn't want to. Either way, I was on my own. I decided to protect my kids with or without David's help. I scheduled a consultation with a lawyer, not for divorce, yet, but to understand my options. The lawyer asked if I had documentation of Patricia's behavior, and I handed over the photos, the baby monitor recording, a log of incidents I'd kept since she moved in. He looked genuinely disturbed. "This isn't just boundary crossing," he said. "This could be considered parental alienation." That word stuck with me. Alienation. Because that's what it felt like I was being erased from my own family, one subtle step at a time. I started staying with my sister more often. Ellie began asking why she couldn't sleep in her own bed, and I didn't have a good answer. I couldn't explain to a 6-year-old that I was afraid of what might happen when I wasn't around. David visited a few times, but I could tell he was torn. Patricia had taken over our home, and he didn't seem to know how, or want, to push back. Then one night, I got a call from our neighbor, Lisa. She sounded shaken. "I didn't know who else to call," she said. "But I just saw Patricia outside with Ellie. She told me she was taking her to the park, but she got into a cab. With luggage." My blood went cold. I called David. No answer. I called Patricia. Straight to voicemail. I called the police. It felt like everything slowed down, my heart, the world, time itself. I kept hearing Ellie's voice in my head, "Mommy will always be here." When the police finally tracked them down at a motel on the edge of town, Patricia told the officers she was taking a break from the house, and Ellie needed some time away. David arrived at the station just as I did. He looked at Patricia, then at me. For the first time, I saw something crack in him. Fear. He realized it too. We almost lost our daughter. And he let it happen. He didn't say a word all the way home. Patricia was silent in the back seat. Ellie slept in my arms, her little fingers clutching my shirt like she was afraid I'd vanish if she let go. When we got home, David packed a bag for Patricia. No conversation. No arguing. Just a quiet, heavy finality. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just stared at me. And then she smiled. Like she still believed this wasn't over. After Patricia left, the house felt different, quieter, safer, but still heavy with the echoes of what had happened. David didn't apologize right away. In fact, he barely spoke for days. I kept things steady for Ellie, keeping her routines normal, pretending like nothing had shifted when, in reality, everything had. One night, as I tucked her into bed, she whispered, "I'm glad you're back, Mommy." And even though I hadn't gone anywhere, I knew what she meant. That night, David finally sat down with me. No excuses, no defensiveness, just a man who looked like he'd been forced to stare into a mirror and hated what he saw. He said he'd failed us. That he was so caught up in guilt over his sister's divorce, her struggles, that he forgot who his family really was. I didn't offer him comfort, not yet. I told him we'd need therapy, individually and together, if there was any hope of rebuilding trust. I made it clear, Ellie's safety and emotional health came first. We started the sessions. Slowly, painfully, we began to untangle the knots Patricia had tied around our lives. In one session, David admitted he'd seen warning signs but ignored them because facing them meant admitting his sister was unstable. I told him denial almost cost us our daughter. He nodded, tears in his eyes, and for once, I believed he understood. As for Patricia, we filed for a restraining order after the therapist recommended it. The court granted it without question after reviewing the evidence. We cut off all contact. She tried to send letters through other relatives, but we sent them back unopened. Ellie is healing. She still asks about Aunt Patricia sometimes, and I always tell her the truth in gentle pieces, enough to be honest, not enough to break her heart. David and I are not the same couple we were before. There's still love, but it's layered now, with pain, with caution, with scars. But also with strength. I took my sister in when she had nowhere to go. I showed her kindness, opened my home and heart. And she tried to replace me in my own family. But in the end, I chose to fight, for my child, for my voice, for the truth. And I don't regret a single decision I made to protect what truly matters.